Welcome and thank you for joining us at Coalesce 2020. My name is Erin Vaughn and I am the Director of Customer Success here at Fishtown Analytics. I am thrilled to be hosting this Ask the Experts session discussing customer product journey. And I am joined by Sanjana and Grant Winship, both analytics engineers on the professional services team here at Fishtown. I'll give them a second to say hi.
Hey, I'm Grant. I joined Fishtown this year from a music gear marketplace called Reverb, and I work as an analytics engineer. I'm solving a lot of different types of client problems, and we're going to dig into one today, and I'm really excited to be here with y'all.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sanjana. I am also an analytics engineer on the professional services team. I work with Grant and Erin. I've been here about a year and a half, long time. I'm super excited to be here today.
Awesome. So these Ask the Experts sessions today came from polling the DBT community and our team internally about what topics people would be interested in hearing about. So for those of you unfamiliar with Fishtown's backstory, we bootstrapped our business with consulting to support DBT for the first 3 years. This consulting team has grown into our professional services team today. This small but mighty team spends their time, as Grant mentioned, on a number of things, helping set up modern data stacks, building out DBT projects from the ground up, auditing and refactoring existing DBT projects, and teaching DBT trainings. Hence the experts here. They use DBT every day and have worked across dozens of projects, developing strong opinions about best practices along the way. So some quick housekeeping before I pass it over to Grant and Sanjana. As much fun as I know everyone has staying muted during all these video calls that 2020 has thrown our way, we encourage active participation. So chat is already taking place. I can see it threading up already in DBT Slack in the Coalesce Customer Product Journey channel. If you haven't joined that Slack channel already, now is the time to do so. And I think that there is an easy to join button that you can click just below in teal below the video. So to kick things off, why don't you start by introducing yourself, letting us know where you're calling in from, and breaking the virtual conference ice by letting us know a word that you struggle pronouncing. There was a quick thread on this topic in this morning's DBT 101 session with the word analogous. And this thread will make me personally feel better as I struggle to chew my way through saying ask the experts 100 times throughout this presentation. So yeah, unlike in-person conferences where talking during presentations is definitely frowned upon, we very much encourage it in that Coalesce Customer Product Journey channel throughout the conversation. So head over there. And after the session, Grant and Sanjana will be available in that channel to continue the conversation and answer any extra questions that we don't get to. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Grant and Sanjana.
All right, let me share my screen here. Sanjana, can you give me a signal if we're up and running?
Yeah, we're
Awesome.
good.
All right, welcome everybody. As I said, I'm Grant. You can follow me at Grant Winship on Twitter if you want a bunch of data meme nonsense in your life. Sanjana, anything?
Nope, let's do it.
Awesome. So I don't know about struggled to pronounce, but I can tell you I struggled to spell the word occurrences like 30 times while building up this project. So that is my bit of intro. Yeah, Sanj.
Yeah, I realized at some point last year when doing a really extensive Salesforce modeling sprint that I really struggled with the word opportunity.
Good one.
Cool. Okay, so let's dive right in, yeah? Grant,
Yep.
ready?
Ready.
Okay, so great analytics engineers aren't just librarians, they're also authors. If you guys have been in the DBT community a while, if you think of yourself as an analytics engineer, you might have heard this metaphor. We think of ourselves as librarians and your data as a library. You come into the library, you tell your librarian, your analytics engineer, that you have a question. The librarian then points you towards a book that answers your question. Somebody else comes in, maybe they have another question that can be answered by the same book. Maybe they use that same book or another book. But what we found as we iterate through all of these client projects, we get a little bit further in our careers and we see our clients grow, is that we find ourselves not just being their librarian, but also having to take on a little bit of the author role. We find ourselves playing a part in crafting characters, crafting settings, writing chapters. Maybe we help write these books. What does that mean in practice? It means that once your data team at your organization has created a set of reusable data assets that are being used by your library goers, you might find yourself in a place where you're thinking about what's next. What is the level 2? How do you go about answering these level 2 questions that you might be finding? And we want to think about how can we go about doing these things while still staying true to the philosophies that we have already created and we know that we align with. How do we make sure that we do this in a way that's reusable? How do we do this in a way that's flexible? How do we do this in a way that's modular? And how do we do all of that keeping in mind performance? So a specific example of a type of problem where we've had to find ourselves taking on more of this author role is thinking about customer journeys, customer interactions, anything that really centers the customer in that really special way. There's a few different types of customer journeys, or maybe we want to define the customer journey first. A customer journey is just any sequence of activities that tells a story about a customer's relationship with your company. We're all familiar with the different kinds of journeys. We've all probably been tasked with working with event data, turning that into sessions, tracing events in user sessions to understand how exactly a customer interacts and navigates your product. Maybe we've worked with email marketing data, optimizing progressive customized messaging to engage customers more over time. But the one that we're focused on today is looking at what we can learn about a customer through what they're buying from us, looking at orders and upsells. How do we map purchase patterns to optimize grouping, presentation, and marketing of products or subscriptions?
Yeah, and this problem was presented to us in a collaboration session with Celia Wong from TULA Skincare. She came to us and she wanted to get a better sense of how to map these purchase journeys over time in a bunch of different contexts, and was dissatisfied with a lot of the way that a lot of the different visualization options that were available with common data tables. So
Yeah.
some
And
of those,
Grant, actually,
yeah.
if you go to the next slide, I think we touch on this a little bit,
Beautiful.
right?
Yeah.
Why orders and upsells? Grant is so right. We talked to Selena, shout out to Selena at Tula Skincare, and she gave us this really compelling story of how at Tula they think or have to think about the way that the customer grows with the brand, especially in industries like beauty or skincare. Somebody who started with a face cleanser at your beauty brand 10 years later, as they learn more about skincare or beauty, as they grow older, their needs really change. So it becomes really important to understand how the customer's grown. And go ahead.
Yeah. So part of the dissatisfaction that we were seeing in how to approach this problem and how to understand these product purchase journeys came down to visualization. Commonly, and probably the most common visualization for a journey type of situation is a funnel, right? And they work pretty well for certain things, right? A single journey that clearly defines start and end point, you can get a pretty good sense of what's going on, but they have shortcomings, right? They're very difficult to compare, and they're very limited in terms of exploration, right? It's very difficult to look at a lot of different pathways or variables side by side. I've definitely, in my experience, seen product managers flipping between like a bunch of tabs of different funnels, trying to kind of eyeball some sort of comparison, right? I'm probably not the only one there. And that should immediately tell us as analytics engineers, this is not the ideal visualization for what that person is trying to reach for, right? On the other end of the spectrum, we see stuff like this, right? In like the data visualization community that's really beautiful and interesting and impressive. I love making stuff like this. There's like big D3 communities where they do really cool things like this. This is Boston's bike sharing program mapped routes between stops. And while this is amazing and really, really awesome, I don't immediately know what actionable insight to glean from this, right? And even if I had more context, I don't know that I would know immediately what to do with this data. And when we're working with visualization in the BI layer, it's really important that we're fueling decision making and that we're keeping like the purpose of our visualization in mind, right? Like we want people to be able to reach a conclusion or understand a story faster than looking at the tabulated data, faster than reading a bunch of text, right? And I don't know that for that purpose, this visualization fuels what we're looking for. So, is there a middle way between those two things? And how do we get there? I believe so. I believe the issue is not really in the visualization limitations themselves, but in how we're organizing the data. Okay, so to understand how we get to this middle path, Sanjana is going to talk a little bit about like why we want to do this and how we do it.
So why do we visualize customer journey data? More than the greater question of why visualize data at all. You want to understand the different categories that your products fall in. We want to use this visualization as a toolbox for generating ideas. What can we learn that we don't know yet? And we also want to be able to work with the people who have domain knowledge, your marketing people, your product people, and make sure that you can give them something that they can look at and go, okay, I know what to do now. We want something that's super actionable. So what do we need to do? We're going to normalize, clean, and pivot our data to the user grain. There's going to be some filtering. We're going to be thinking about time bounds, types, value ranges. Especially in this case, we're going to be thinking pretty seriously about groupings, product categories, tiers, cohorts. You might want to look at age ranges of your customers. We want to be able to do all of those things in a way that's flexible and performant. And that's actually can be really hard. But now that we've framed the question, how are we going to actually do this? We know that this needs to happen in a way that's collaborative, but also controlled, right? So we want to be working with all of these people, all of these different people on all of our teams, but we want to own it so that the knowledge and code is version controlled. Where do we want to do it? We want to make sure that these assets that we create are performant, but still flexible as much as they can be, semi-permanent, and also reusable as much as they can be. So DVT sounds like a great place to get started.
Absolutely. All right, so let's dig into what this all actually means. I'm really excited to announce brand new skincare line, Sanjana Skincare. Okay. Being that Celia from TULA presented this to us, we decided we would launch our own product. We spun up a little BigQuery warehouse. We created a small line of products and a products table, made a bunch of orders and an orders table, created some users, and we had a pretty small amount of users to orders so that there'd be a fair amount of repeat purchasing that we could analyze. And we want to understand some questions, right? Like what products are people buying first? What things are people repurchasing? Are there trends or groupings within these products that we could use to inform our marketing strategy or make other decisions like that? So in order to do this, we're going to look at the data through mode. We're going to look at the code a little bit in DBT for how we did this and how we're visualizing it. So I'm going to hop out of this presentation real quick and we'll take a look at that. Okay, so first off, we're here in mode analytics, BI tool. These are just our basic products, right? We've got some great stuff in here. We've got Scrub Step, sponsored by Skrillex. You know, we're doing great. Philadelphia's favorite pH balancing sun protection. This is wonderful. The Night's Wash is a great product. I highly recommend. We've got an array of categories, price, and if we click over to look at our code, we're doing some stuff here to split our categories out into array and then pivot it, which we've written a macro for. We've also added some grouping stuff in the transform layer, creating some buckets by price. So already we're using the transform layer to add some new dimensions to the data. But if we just take this orders and products as is, and we dive in, we are creating a query where we pivot out the orders per user into a sequence. And we then get a visualization that looks like this. So as we can see, while this is very cool, I don't know that there's an immediately actionable insight to take away from this, right? Like, it's easy to see that people are buying the Hydro Moisture a lot as their CBD moisturizer. People are buying the Green and Clear Cleanser a lot as a first product. So both of our CBD infused products are doing really well, but it becomes a little chaotic to draw a conclusion from after that. So my first instinct here is let's group this up a little bit. Okay, so we mentioned that we have that price tiering code in place, right? So what we could do next is run this exact same code, but instead of spitting out the product name, we're going to use the price tier here, and we're going to sequence those. Okay, and that gives us a visualization that looks like this. All right, now immediately the conclusions are so much clearer, right? We've zoomed way out and we can suddenly see, oh yeah, okay, people who buy in the middle price tier are repurchasing a lot, and that seems really sticky. People who are coming in at the cheaper tier are moving up to the middle tier and staying there. People who are engaging first with our more expensive products, or people who are trying them, tend to be switching back down, right? So we don't have this kind of like ladder up the price tier situation. And we see that the mid tier is really, really sticky. All right. So those are good conclusions, but they're kind of broad. We don't know exactly what we might do with that. We're starting to get some ideas. So the next thing we thought about is we've got these categories that we've pivoted out. Maybe we want to group by those, right? So there's some complexity there because there's multiple categories. So if we start with, we know each product has at least one category. So we start there and we group by this category, same exact code. Again, we see some clearer conclusions than when we were splitting out individual products, right? We see that the cleanser is pretty sticky. And in general, we can see that the area between cleansers, moisturizers, and masks has a lot of interplay. People who are in those product areas tend to be rebuying in those product areas, or one of those three, right? So those are really where it's strong. So now we have some insight that grouping by categories is pretty helpful. Grouping by price tier is pretty helpful. We might want to combine those. Additionally, we're losing some categories, right? Like CBD is not on here because nothing is marked category 1 with CBD. So what we actually need to do is intentionally fan this table out in order to see every possible combination of categories that are associated with a product. And we want to combine those with tiers, right? We're starting to create our own analytical taxonomy. That's not really useful for user presentation. This isn't necessarily something we want to live in our app's business logic, right? Mid-tier CBD cleansers is not really how we want to frame things for our user experience, right? But it's super, super useful for someone doing marketing analysis. So we want to create this concept in a way that's not just going to fuel this visualization, but is going to fuel visualizations and analysis throughout the stack in data science products that are built on top of it, right? So what we want to do is fold these insights back into the transform layer. We've done exploration. We've visualized it in a dashboard. A lot of people stop here, but it's really important to take what we're learning, take the desire paths, that take the answers people are finding to their questions, bring them back into the transform layer, right? So we've actually built an additional mart on top of our DIM products and our fact orders marts, right? We've got these clean, accurate, well-transformed marts. And then we're going to build a value adding mart on top of this called fact order sequences. Now, we can't dive fully into the code today due to time restrictions, but suffice to say, I do want to call out, we're leveraging a lot of for loops, a lot of Jinja to keep this as dry as possible, since we're doing repeated logic to sort of tier these sequences, each stage in the sequence the same way, and fan this table out in a really deliberate way. Now we have a table people are less likely to misuse. We can batch process it. So even if we put intense transformation in here, it's going to stay performant. And it's also testable, right? We've now made something with a specific use case that's very testable. And that pays dividends too. When we come back into the BI layer, if we want to visualize this finally, all that logic now becomes just one select star statement, right? And we can then pack additional things on top of it. It becomes very trivial and very easy to reason about if we wanted to expose some filtering into the BI layer, add things like filtering what we want the first step in the sequence to be, right? So we know the CBD products are doing really well. So let's filter our first stage to that. And we finally can end up with something like this, where we see what people who are buying CBD first are buying next, right? We can immediately see some insights. We know what sorts of products to market to those people to get them to be expanding outside of just the CBD line. And we also know people who have not bought the CBD product yet, what sort of groupings of products to bring into them or re-engage people who have bought lower priced products after the CBD product. If we want to re-engage them with something that's higher priced, we immediately have some insights that we can gain. And there's a ton of room to continue to optimize this with this visualization and this output in mind and fold that back into the transform layer. So with that all said, I want to kick it back to Sanjana and ask, keeping our why in mind, did we do it?
Yeah. I think that once we've framed our why and we all aligned on what was possible and what needed to be prioritized and all of those great things, we did actually do the things we set out to do. We were able to compare different categories and different groupings. We generated ideas. We saw that CBD products were selling really well in the mid-range. That's not something that we knew before. And we created a visualization that we believe will engage decision makers and say, just like we said, okay, this is something that I see, I understand, and I know what to do with this.
Awesome. Yeah. So the point that I really want to drive home here finally is that human beings engage with stories, and data is just a way of telling stories that ideally reflect reality. But the place that it's generated and the place that it's ultimately understood is very, very human, right? And so transformation is actually this very human layer where we get to craft the story, right? BI might be where it's read or understood, but the authorship and the ownership and the creativity actually lives in the transform layer. And it's important to constantly be folding those stories and those insights back into the transform layer. All right. I hope this has been valuable for everybody. Thank you so much for spending some time with us this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. And also thank you to Celia Wong at TULA for inspiring this talk and giving us a lot of great feedback. Really appreciate it. Very much looking forward to answering questions and diving this more in with everybody in Slack.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Grant and Sanjana. Yeah, there are some good nuggets for you to answer once you jump back into the chat. There's some commentary around Fishtown Analytics drinking games for Coalesce this week. Whether or not you have a podcast, people can subscribe to. Some good ones for you guys to jump into afterwards. So thank you so much. This has been great.